You are listening to Proof Text, a Glossa House podcast exploring Scripture and all things related to it. New episodes are released daily. For more information, check out glossahouse.com and subscribe to our channels on Spotify and YouTube. Welcome and enjoy.
Hello and welcome to Proof Text. I'm Michael Halcomb, and this is a Fallacy of the Week episode. And what we do here is we often look at memes or posts floating around the internet or whatever, and we attempt to identify the fallacies within said post or whatever's floating around and explain those, define those, and that sort of thing. This is important because there's a lot of stuff out there in internet land and beyond that can come off as persuasive when in fact it's fallacious. So in today's episode, I want to share with you a post that someone sent to me, and we'll take a few minutes and we'll identify the fallacies within it. I don't even want to show this dude's name, but whatever. He writes this: the vast majority of people walking away from Christianity in America are not rejecting the person and work of Jesus. They're rejecting faulty biblical interpretations that lead to bigotry, oppression, and marginalization. This rejection isn't unchristian, it is Christ-like. Okay, one more time. The vast majority of people walking away from Christianity in America are not rejecting the person and work of Jesus. They're rejecting faulty biblical interpretations that lead to bigotry, oppression, and marginalization. This rejection isn't unchristian, it's Christ-like. All right, first thing, right out of the gate, anytime somebody's making any kind of claim, even me right now, anytime somebody's making any kind of claim, you can ask, where's the evidence to support that? All right, so right out the gate, we see he says the vast majority of people. Okay, the vast majority of people walking away from Christianity are doing it because of this. They're not rejecting the person and work of Jesus. All right, so how does he know that the vast majority of people in America are walking away from Christianity, one? And two, how does he know that the vast majority of people that he says are walking away from Christianity are actually walking away? Where does he get the numbers? So he doesn't give us any data to support this claim. Anytime you see somebody saying, appealing to a majority, ding, 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 like bells and alarms should be going off in your head, right? This appeal to majority, that's a fallacy in and of itself. The appeal to the majority. Plus, he doesn't give us any data, okay? And he says they're not rejecting, so he says they're walking away, but they're not rejecting the person working of Jesus. Here's why they're walking away. They're rejecting faulty biblical interpretations that lead to bigotry, oppression, and marginalization. Where's your proof? And how do you know that the people who are walking away aren't walking away from Jesus, and two, are rejecting faulty biblical interpretations? Where's your proof that the majority are walking away because they reject faulty biblical interpretations? How do you know that? Back it up. Prove it. And then how do you know that those biblical interpretations that you say they're walking away from fit into one of three categories, ones that lead to bigotry, oppression, or marginalization? You don't know because you can't back that up. That data doesn't exist. You can't prove that. Also, define what you mean by bigotry, oppression, and marginalization. These are ambiguity terms here because you don't define them. And he says this rejection isn't unchristian, it's Christ-like. Prove it. Prove it. Okay? How isn't it unchristian? And how is it Christ-like? You're going to make claims, prove them. There's more going on here. This is just an annoying post. Like that's what this dude does. He just trolls sort of Christians, evangelical Christians. That's kind of his MO. So we got the appeal to the majority. We got the hasty generalization going on here. That's another fallacy that's taking place. And that's a hasty generalization, right? Is when your conclusion isn't logically justified by sufficient or evidence, or it's got unbiased evidence. So you can say like all teenagers are irresponsible because my neighbor who has a teenage kid, that teen is always forgetting to take out the trash. Well, you can't generalize about all teens because of that one neighbor, right? And so this is a fallacy because it says the vast majority of people are walking away, yada, yada, yada. So it's generalizing the appeal to the majority, the vast majority. So it's generalizing the motivations of a large and diverse group of people based on an assumption that this one dude has. It's ridiculous. And if you wanted to sort of prevent this, provide specific data to support the claim and avoid making broad generalizations without adequate support. It's that easy. There's a false dilemma going on here, false dichotomy, and either or fallacy is when it presents two possibilities, only two possibilities, either or, when in fact there are more, right? Again, you've heard me say it on these segments many times. You're either with us or against us, when in fact there could be more, right? So this quote that we're looking at here, it's suggesting that people are rejecting the person and work of aren't rejecting the person and work of Jesus. They're rejecting faulty biblical interpretations. It doesn't consider other possible reasons why people might leave the church or Christianity, such as personal experiences or theological disagreements or a shift in different spiritual beliefs, or they were hurt by someone, or the church in their town is gone, or there's a whole host of reasons they moved. There's a whole ton of reasons. It is an either or thing. So false dichotomy fallacy here. We also have begging the question, which is also known as circular reasoning. I've talked a lot about this on the podcast too. This is where the premise assumes the truth of the conclusion instead of supporting it. Right? So you can say reading is beneficial because reading is good for you. Well, that's circular reasoning. The premise, right? The premise is already assuming the truth of the conclusion instead of supporting, right, the conclusion. And so he says this rejection isn't unchristian; it's Christ-like. That's assuming the conclusion is that assumes the conclusion that is trying to prove without providing evidence. And it presupposes that rejecting faulty biblical interpretations is inherently Christ-like. Well, prove it. It doesn't demonstrate why that's necessarily true. And so if you want to prevent that, right, dude, provide the reasons, provide the evidence to support the conclusion. Avoid assuming the truth of the conclusion within the premise. That is circular reasoning. We also might have like a no true Scotsman thing going on here. And this no true Scotsman fallacy, what it does is that it arbitrarily excludes certain cases by changing the definition to protect the generalization. All right, so like there's this old saying like no true Scotsman pours sugar on his porridge, right? And in this quote that we're looking at, the rejection is an unchristian, it's Christ-like. That redefines what it means to be Christ-like or Christian, right? It redefines what it means to be Christian by excluding those who interpret the Bible in a way that leads to bigotry, oppression, or marginalization as not being Christian. Somebody who is Christian can read the Bible in a way that leads to one of those conclusions, and it doesn't even mean that they are a bigot or oppressive or marginalized. The biblical narrative itself has stories that recount bigotry and oppression and marginalization. So this is implying that true Christians would only reject these faulty things and reject these faulty interpretations, reject bigotry, oppression, marginalization when that's what the interpretation leads to. So if you want to prevent this, you got to avoid redefining terms in a way that excludes counterexamples without justification, and you got to ensure that definitions remain consistent. And that's a very important thing. And I think there's an appeal to emotion going on here as well. It's a last fallacy. Again, this isn't always fallacious, but when it's manipulative and it's manipulating someone's emotions in response of a valid or compelling argument, then it is fallacious. So like if you don't donate to this charity, you're letting children starve. Well, so in this quote that we're looking at, right, what it's doing is it's appealing to the reader's sense of morality, and it's doing that by framing the rejection of certain biblical interpretations as Christ-like or unchristlike. And so this emotional appeal, right, what it's doing is it's sort of sidestepping the need for a logical argument and instead relies on the reader's positive associations with being Christ-like and negative evaluations of being unchristlike. And so everybody wants to be Christ-like, right? And so they're going to side with that. And so if you want to prevent this, right, you want to base your arguments on evidence and logic rather than manipulating people emotionally. Now, it's not wrong to bring in emotion and appeal to people's emotions. It just can't be manipulative, right? So that's some of the fallacies. There are probably more embedded in here. I think it's like 5. This is a stupid post, a stupid quote, and we need to be able to identify the fallacies in it. It's pretty easy on this one. All right, my friends. I'm gonna stop right there and say I hope that helps.
Interested in growing your ancient language skills but not sure where to start? Glossa House can help. From illustrated readers and short stories to lexicons and grammars, Glossa House offers a variety of resources for beginning, intermediate, and experienced ancient language learners. Head to glossahouse.com today. Glossa House, language resources for the global community.